And then you wonder why your child won't ever talk to you. Because this is also the part I hear where a lot of parents say, I'm open. I told them they could talk to me, but it's the small little digs. You don't realize that you're done. So we're going to point out some scenarios today of what invalidating sounds like. And then you can take a moment of self-awareness, not to feel bad, to be like, oh, let me change it. Then I'm gonna give you examples of how you can respond. Very quick one sentence phrases that you can say, which validates your child's feelings and allows them to put their guard down, and they build a little more trust in you. Welcome back to another episode of Pursue Her podcast, where we explore real life issues through the lens of faith and personal growth. Today, I'm talking to my mamas, and I want us to understand what it really looks like to validate our child's feelings. We hear it all the time. We got to validate our child's feelings. And what I have learned in my time and working with adults and even speaking with children, that a lot of parents think they're validating their child's feelings, but you really aren't. Right? So I want to go through some examples today. And you think you are, but sometimes, like, you know what? I feel like the Holy Spirit said, let's make it plain, let's make it simple. Just if you are a parent who cares to like, if this matters to you, that you have a safe space with your child, I really want you to tune in, listen, lean in, take some nuggets away from this, because it will truly transform the relationship that you have with your child. A lot of times you wonder, like, my child won't talk to me. I don't know why. I've told them that I'll be here for them, but they just won't come talk to me. Well, maybe some of the stuff I'm going to share today might be reasons why they don't talk to you and they don't know how to articulate it. Okay. But have you ever heard your child crying over something small and you thought, like, this is not a big deal? Why are you crying? Yeah, I've been there. I've been guilty of responding that way, but this is what I've learned. That is still a form of dismissing what they feel when we respond that way. We're not just quieting their emotions, we're teaching them it's not safe to share them. So I understand motherhood is a challenge alone, but especially when we add all our other roles, when we're juggling work, dinner, the meltdowns, you're a doctor, and if you're married, and if you're an entrepreneur, there are many aspects of it. But this is what we signed up for when we signed up to be a parent, that we are to raise um healthy and whole individuals. That should be your desire, that should be your goal. But so admitting that validating the feelings, it doesn't come naturally to most of us, especially if it wasn't modeled growing up to you. A lot of us just, you may not know it because you haven't seen it. So it's no fault of your own, right? So we explore, we learn, we go podcasts, we get podcasts, we go to books, we get the books, we go to conferences, we do those things so that we can learn it. Okay. So this is just another tool to add into your toolkit of all the learning that you have done to fine tune this skill set, right? Because it is something that will help you when your children are in your home, and when they are out of your home and they are an adult children, you still need to figure out how to validate those feelings. So this is why validation is important, and understanding the difference of validation, because validation does not mean you agree. That does not mean you agree with what they're saying. It just means I'm acknowledging what you're saying. Not from a judgmental standpoint, not sarcastically, not, side eyeing, not fully. It does mean I am agreeing with you. Kids feel safe. All people feel safe. Let's be honest. It's a skill set that shouldn't just use with our kids, but we should use with everyone around us. But our kids are worthy of this too, even though they aren't adult. They should have this too. Kids feel safe when their emotions are met with empathy and not judgment. Okay. Sometimes we can be very judgmental and not realizing, because you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. That ain't a problem. Suck it up. No, it is a big deal. I have had to learn to master this, especially in my previous role where I was working in middle schools, like as a safe coordinator, where I am the go-to person when kids are in crisis. So they're coming to me and there's a crisis because they lost all their friends that they were sitting with at lunch. That is a big deal. That is a huge deal. And I'm going to validate that feeling. I'm going to acknowledge it. And then I'm going to help you problem solve. I'm not going to say, just go find somebody else. No, we have to take the time, right? And that's what builds that rapport. That's what builds relationships. That's what get kids to want to come back to talk to you, okay? When you validate their feelings, we teach an emotional intelligence, how to name their emotions, how to regulate them, and how to recover. It's really a process all within that. When we don't validate our children's feelings, kids either are going to shut down or they're going to explode, which are both signs of emotional disconnection because they just don't know how to respond. They don't know how to say it. And what happens when kids don't learn this and they have that emotional disconnection? They grow up to become adults. They have that same emotional disconnection and they can't articulate what they mean. They get into relationships and now they have to navigate all of this. Let's help our children navigate this, okay? Emotional safety matters. And if children can have emotional safety in childhood, it builds trust that lasts into teenage years and beyond. You are a vital part in this process of raising whole, well-minded individuals that will go into the workforce, into society at some point. It starts at home. And if you have not been taught that, this is what this is here for, to help you navigate this. When you teach a child that their tears aren't too much, you show them that they aren't too much. I've had so many kids come to me and crying and say, oh, my mom says I cry too much. I'm too emotional and I can't change that. And they're just devastated, devastated. They know that their crying doesn't solve problems, but that is something that comes out of them. So when you say, stop crying, you cry too much, you just totally crushed your child. Not even realizing it, because I understand on the standpoint as a parent, you're trying to tell them, no, you can't cry for everything. Because if you cry for everything, it could be considered a form of weakness. You got to go into the workforce. You see so much. There's so much behind the comments that you make because you can see it from the lens as an adult. But when you say those things and you aren't fully articulating all of that to them, you're just saying, no, just chill out. It'll be okay. You got to suck it up. You got to keep going. They don't interpret that as that. So yes, you have a valid point with what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from, but we're adults. When you're saying that to a child, it doesn't come off the same. And then you wonder why your child won't ever talk to you. Because this is also the part I hear where a lot of parents say, I'm open. I told them they could talk to me, but it's the small little digs. You don't realize that you're done. So we're going to point out some scenarios today of what invalidating sounds like. And then you can take a moment of self-awareness, not to feel bad, to be like, oh, let me change it. Then I'm going to give you examples of how you can respond. Very quick one-sentence phrases that you can say, which validates your child's feelings and allows them to put their guard down, and they build a little more trust in you. As a mom, you want to raise children who love the Lord, but sometimes it feels like you're unsure if you're doing it right. Well, raising kingdom minded children is the guide you've been praying for. With this digital download, you'll gain practical steps and encouragement to nurture your children's faith, build a strong foundation, and create a legacy of love for Christ. Let's walk this journey together. Your children's hearts are worth it. Click the link in the show notes for quick access and start shaping their future in God's kingdom today. So here's a scenario. Kid gets their feelings hurt at school. They say, oh, nobody wanted to play with me today. And then the parent says, oh, don't worry about that. You'll make new friends tomorrow. That is invalidating. Why? It brushes past pain instead of naming it. I'm going to get into the proper examples later. I'm getting ahead of myself. So that is an example. You say, oh, don't worry about that. You'll make new friends tomorrow. That was invalidating. Okay, here's another one. If a child is frustrated with their homework, they say, oh my God, I hate math. I'm dumb. Your response, you're not dumb. Just stop saying that. It corrects the feeling, but instead of exploring it. Again, validating our children's feeling is a process. We're teaching them a couple of things through this process. We don't just want them to stop saying something, because what if they still feel it? Don't you want them to not even feel it? Don't you want them to process through that so that they can understand and know you are an overcomer? Right? Another scenario. Fear before bedtime is a big thing, especially with younger kids. If a child says, I'm scared, something's under my bed, the parent turns around and says, okay, there's nothing there, you're fine. It invalidates the fear instead of calming it with understanding. Yes, and a lot of these responses that I'm saying, which are examples of how we are invalidating our children's feelings, are usually responses that we say when we are doing 10 million things at once. Your child comes and says something like, no, you'll be a good, I'll get, and like we just go. You're not even intending to do it. You're just going. You got a lot on your mind. You're stressed. You're doing this. It's just that burnout. But this episode is to help you to be more intentional in those moments. Okay. Another example: sibling conflict. You got your kids fighting or arguing. One of your child says to you, "You always take their side." Your response: "That's not true. You're overreacting." Why? That no, it defends instead of listening. That's their truth. That's their perspective. Again, as a parent, you like, that ain't true, because in your mind, you just know last week that you took that child's side. Now they trying to throw it in your face. No, Yeah, there may be aspects, and that's when you have to figure out when if a child's trying to manipulate you. But a lot of times, even when the kids say stuff and they have these outbursts, there is truth behind it. I hope this year you become more intentional. You take the time or you set the time to talk to your kids to validate. Here's another example of what we that invalidates our children's feelings. Say, for example, disappointment. The child says, I was really hoping to go to the park. Parent says, well, you can't always get what you want. It does this does not teach resilience. It teaches resignation, not resilience. Yes, I understand from an adult. No, you can't always get what you want. I get that, but to a child, it's interpreted differently. And a lot of times, adults feel like I ain't got to explain myself to no child. Well, keep raising these dysfunctional kids, and then they go to be adults, and then you wonder why they're not having these relationships and thriving in their jobs and their careers. Is it because what was said at home? That's no shade, because I've had to always be self-aware to navigate that, to look at that things that I could do better. This is what being a parent is. We are a big process, a big part of the process of helping our children navigate and learn fundamental skills and strategies. Hun, I'm not taking away the fact that you're stressed. I get it. You stressed, you got a lot going on, but that baby didn't ask to be here. So just hear me out. I'm gonna give you a couple of different little examples of how you can, and it don't take a long time, where you can, in a sense, validate your child's feeling in just in the same amount of words, sentences, but a total different approach. So let's go back to the first scenario where there's a child who has a hurt feelings at school. They said, nobody want to play with me today. This is what validation sounds like. Baby, that sounds real lonely. I feel sad too if that happened to me. I didn't go into no whole therapy session. I didn't go into no counseling session. I just acknowledged the fact that there is some feelings right there. I feel sad too if that happened to me. Now, if you got time, you can dig a little more. But were you feeling lonely? Were you feeling sad? Okay. What are some ways that maybe we can find some people to play with you tomorrow? Or if it's in a moment where they're saying this and you are really doing a whole lot, you cooking dinner, you navigating stuff, you got a business call, you're doing all these different things, and you can say, you know what, it sounds like, this is something that really bother you. Can we talk about this maybe tomorrow around 7? Be intentional. Be intentional. You put everything else on your calendar. You don't have time with your kids on your calendar? If you don't, add it. I know I'm a busy person. So I have time with my kids where they know this is your designated time where me and you gonna talk. Of course, the impromptu conversations that happen, but to actually sit and talk uninterrupted. We're gonna sit and watch a movie. Y'all, these kids be out the house before you know it. Make that time. Okay. Another example, the example about the frustration over homework. If your child says, I hate math, I'm dumb. Parent, here's a way you can validate. It sounds like you're frustrated. Math can feel hard sometimes, but that doesn't mean you're not smart. Being able to respond this way deals with your own level of self-discipline and knowing how to control your own emotions and knowing how to respond a certain way. So it has a lot to do with you as well, to emotional regulation. But that sentence is so much better than just saying, stop saying stuff like that. You ain't dumb. You know what? I can understand. But that don't mean you're not smart because you're frustrated. All right. Another example, before bedtime, if you got a kid who's scared about something being under the bed, they say, I'm scared. Parent, you could say, that sounds scary. You want me to check with you so we can make sure it's safe? And if you like, I ain't got time for all that. Well, I'll be praying for your child. It's a choice. It's a choice. And sometimes if that is what it does to build safety, to build that connection, because here's the thing, the validation you give to your child now when they're in the house, the connection that you build now with your child in the house will sustain you for when they become an adult. So many parents be so confused why when their child leave the house, they don't want to talk to them. They don't come to them and they wonder why. Because in your defense, you feel like I've done everything. I've sacrificed, I've done this, food on the table, I got them wherever they wanted. I was there when I could. I was working multiple jobs. I understand from an adult, but it doesn't translate to these little people that we are responsible for. Okay. I just want you to be intentional. I just want you to keep it in mind. This is a skill. You're not going to get it overnight, but it's a skill. Okay. Another scenario, sibling conflict. When they say you always take their side, you always take their side. Your response could say, sounds like you feel like I'm being unfair. Tell me what made you feel that way. I know that's one of the things that I told my children to say. Like, if you ever feel like I'm being unfair to you, tell me. Let's talk it through. Because 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10. I say 9 out of 10. I'm not being unfair. I just didn't explain myself. So when you start that conversation, tell me why you feel that way. You're like, okay, I feel that way. And so now I am teaching my child how to articulate their feelings. Now I'm teaching my child how, in a sense, to create a boundary, to figure out what they like and what they don't like with interactions with people. This is what this teaches. Tell me what made you feel that way. Instead of saying, I don't know, like, I don't know what's on the answer in my house. No, you have to talk about it. I'm raising four men. Okay. I'm gonna raise four emotionally intelligent men who know how to regulate their emotions, who know how to speak kindly, who know how to set boundaries. Yes, these four black men gonna know how, right? And I tell them, if you can speak back to me, because I know my tone is not always the best. One of my sons called me Beauty and the Beast, something that I work on. But if you can learn how to speak to me, it's not what you say and how you say it, I'm building a resilience in them that can't nobody ever take away. That is what validating your child's feelings does. That is what this process does. It's bigger than just saying, I don't have time. Oh, I got time for my kids. If I got time for everything else, I got time for my kids to have a talk, to have a conversation. Last scenario, disappointment. Kids say, I was really hoping to go to the park. Here's a way you can respond. I can tell you're disappointed. It's okay to feel that way. So let's think of something fun we can do instead. Or you can say, you know what? Something came up, whatever the case it is. I can understand why you feel that way. How about if we scheduled it for another time? Real simple. It de-escalates the situation, allow your child to feel heard. You still like being the authoritative parent. Like it all works. So when we validate our children's feelings, it's a ripple effect. They learn how to express their feelings safely. They develop confidence that their voice matters. Home becomes a place of connection and not just correction. When we don't validate their feelings, but here's the ripple effect. Kids learn to hide their emotions or seek validation elsewhere. They'll have resentment or withdrawal, and that can grow over time. And there's an emotional distance becomes their norm, especially in teen years. And you wonder why your teenager doesn't talk to you because it's something that you may have unknowingly done when they were younger, when they tried to talk to you in elementary school and you never came back. I am real big with going to my kids. I would go back to my students. If we had a conversation, the man would be like, I am so sorry. I'm sorry. I did not know you interpreted that way. That is not what I meant. When you give me a chance to explain, because I care. And I know if you're still listening, you care. So yeah, we get it wrong. We figure it out along the process. That is the process of parenting. You're not going to get it right every time, but every moment of validation, it builds trust. It tells your child, you can bring your feelings to me even when they're messy. That's the foundation of emotional safety, and that's what raises resilient kids. That's the part that we have to be mindful of. If you want your child to be able to grow and to navigate the terrain of the world that we live in now and who knows what it's going to be, let's take the couple of moments. So I want you to be intentional, right? This next week or whenever you're listening to this, when a moment comes, and maybe you can even go to your kids and say, hey, this is something I'm trying to work on. I know there might have been time, like say you heard some of the examples that I gave that were about like you're not validating your child. Get your kids and say, hey, Laura, I heard this episode and this lady was talking about validating your kids' feelings, and I really thought I was doing that. But some of the examples she said are things that I've said to you before, and I just apologize. Do you know what that would do to your child? To show that you're human, to show that you make mistakes and it's okay to apologize. That's going to build trust right there and just say, hey, I'm working on this. I'm working on this. One thing that we can use, that I'll give a lot of examples, using a code word where you can let your child know, like, hey, I want you to help me navigate this. So if you feel like I say something to you and it makes you feel worse after coming and talking to me, what's a code word you want to use? And they could say, oh, the code word would be banana. Okay, so you now give your child permission to say the word banana because it won't be disrespectful. It won't be, you know what I mean? It won't, but it'll also allow you to catch yourself in that moment. If you say something where you can stop, pause for a second and be like, you know what? My bad. Let me find another way. What would you have rather me said? What would have made this feel better? This is that process. This is what we do as parents. This is what we do as mothers, as daughters of God who are trying to raise these kids the best way that we know how. Being vulnerable with your children at the right time it's okay. It's healthy. Okay? So, keep working on it. keep figuring it out. If you got a situation where you're just not sure how to respond, send me an email, info@kellyjbell.com. Send me a DM. I have no problem giving you a quick example or whatever the case it is. Don't forget, I do offer the complimentary life coaching sessions. I offer just a few every month. So make sure you look at that link on my link tree, where you can sign up for those opportunities, as well as if you just want somebody to navigate this with you. But also make sure you subscribe, download, share this episode so that more moms can hear this news, the resources and the strategies, so that we can build stronger families, stronger connections in the households between mothers and their children, between husbands and wives, that's families as a whole. All right. So until next time, continue to pursue her, being heroic, empowered, and resilient as a mother. Take care.